Welcome. First of all, I'd like to thank you on behalf of Henry Schein Dental of coming and joining us tonight and using our facility. And it was a pleasure for me to do the first class with us, and it was really nice for them to ask me to come and do that. My role with Henry Schein Dental, I've been with Henry Schein Dental for 18 years. And my role is I'm an equipment sales specialist. All that means is I sell the dental equipment. But part of my role is helping people come out and start out their first practices, find locations, contractors, all of that kind of thing, and then help with relocations is part of my job. So they asked me to put a little program together for you, and so I put just a few things highlighted and just kind of go through it here. So choosing the right dental practice location is probably the most important thing you can do in your career, right? You may be able to change things after you open your dental practice, but you can't change the location. You're there. You're stuck there. You've got a 5, 10, 15-year lease there, so you're there. So you really need to make sure it is the right location for you. Let's see if I do this right. Okay, how many here are a lot of students here tonight? Right? Going to go to work as probably an associate out of dental school, am I right? How many is going to set up their own dental practice out of dental school? Corporate dentistry as an associate. A lot of you are going to be associates, okay? So this is very, very important. You're going to go to work for them, and you're going to probably stay 1 or 2 years. And when it comes time to set up your practice, the one thing you got to be sure is, because most offices that you go to that you're going to go to work as an associate are going to require what? They're going to require a non-compete clause. Okay? That's going to really tell you where you can go and where you can set up your practice. They've got to be reasonable in time. They've got to be reasonable in distance, and those kind of things. So doctors will try to get you into a lot of things that won't make it, but typically it's anywhere from 2 to a 5 mile radius of where you work. So as you get to that point in your career, you've been with them a year, you're ready to start your own practice, and a year out is not too soon to start looking for that. You need to make sure that you don't have a non-compete agreement. You want to evaluate the proximity of where you want to go based on where you work. I did have an instance where going out, the doctors were all fine with each other. The associate let the doctor know he was leaving. He had an exit strategy. Somewhere during the process, they got crosswise. The doctor found out that his practice was 4 miles. The radius was 5 miles. Practice was ready to move in. Guess what? Bought him and he couldn't move in. He was done because of the agreement. So you got to be really careful about that. So evaluate the proximity of your practice. You need to know the terms of the agreement. How long is that non-compete agreement? And if I say anything that's derogatory, yell at me, okay? And you want to stay within the legal constraints of the agreement. If you do all of those things, typically the move, your exit strategy from your associateship into your new practice really goes pretty well. But you really want to be careful of that as an associate going in. So make sure you know what you're signing. Get with your attorney. Let them go over the agreement. Make sure that all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed, and you won't have any problem. So when you're looking at locations, one of the things you want to look at when you find the location is, what is the ratio of residents to dentists? Does anybody know what that means? Correct. What is the population per dentist? Is it 1,200 to 1? Is it 2,400 to 1? Is it 5,000 to 1? You won't find that very often anymore. Maybe 1,200 to 1, 2,000. But you want to know what that ratio. You want to know what that ratio is. You want to know about your local competition within the area. You want to take a look at the 5 mile radius of where you're going to be. Find out what your local competition is. You want to know how many other dentists are in the area, just so you and in Las Vegas, that's hard, right? You go down Eastern, you go down Fort Apache, there's a dentist on every corner, right? Sometimes it doesn't matter, but you want to know how many they are. You also know what kind of dentistry they offer. Is it an older practitioner? Is all his patients older? Is he a new millennium? Is he a high-end cosmetic practice? You want to know what kind of dentistry that they provide. And is there a dentist in the area that's ready to retire? That's a gold mine if you can find somebody like that that's ready to retire, because you can go buy, you may not want to buy his location, but you may bring him in as an associate and then have an exit strategy when he leaves and buy his patients. So it is a way to gain patients. So you want to take a look at all of those things when you're looking at where you're going to go. And then you want to know what type of dental specialists are in the area, just because you can kind of tell the growth of the area and what people are out there. Is there a lot of pediatrics? Is there orthodontic? Because maybe you're going to do a little ortho. But so you want to know what the dental specialists are in your area. Demographics data. That's one thing that you've really got to do. You get with a Bob Randolph. You get with a really good financial real estate person that understands the commercial real estate. They can provide you with all the demographics. There's all kinds of things you can get with the city on demographics, and it's really important. You want to find out what the total population and the population by age of it is. If you're going into an old area and it's an over 51 or an over 65 area, you're going to provide different dentistry than what you are going to be if it's a new growing area and a lot of young families, right? So you want to be aware of all of that. You kind of want to find out what the average per capita income is, and why is that important? Because if you're going to do high-end cosmetic dentistry, you better be in an affluent area. We're not going to be in some of the other areas where they're not going to be able to afford it. That's what you want to do and specialize in high-end cosmetic versus a good general care practice. You want to know how many total households are in the area, total families, the average age side, so you can see how many young children are in there. I went to a program last night, and a lot of doctors were there bragging they're on their third generation of families coming to their practice. That's huge. That's a great following. Housing unit breakdown. Are they owned or are they rentals? Are you going to move into an area where there's a lot of high density apartments? You know that Las Vegas is very transient as it is. A lot of people move in, a lot of people move out. If you move in where there's a lot of apartments, it's going to be tough to build a very stable practice. You could build an emergency practice. There's other practices, but you're not going to build a practice that's going to be there for a long time because it's just very transient. So you want to be careful of that as well. You want to take a look at the total number of businesses that are out there. If you go way out north or out south by the executive airport, a lot of housing out there. There's not any commercial out there, and nothing to bring businesses out there. It's really hard to even put a dentist in out there right now. But you want to know what kind of businesses, how many employees are in the area, so you can kind of draw off those employees to help build your practice. Maybe they want to come to work and they work out there totally. They want to get their dentistry done versus staying, in the area where they're home. My wife does dentistry in a completely different place than I do, and it's just because I go to some place that's more convenient because of work than what she does. Okay, so when we find some of the things we look at when we're out there looking for a location is the accessibility and outdoor signage. How easy is it for the patients to move through traffic patterns to get into your parking lot? Las Vegas has some weird stuff going on with all of the barriers they've got trying to get across streets. You'll go to a lot of practices where you think the address is on West Sahara, and you get to West Sahara when where you think the building is, and then you find out the building is 3 buildings back off of the main street. So you want to know how easy it is. We're a very transient population. If it's not easy for me to get there, I don't go. I just don't go. It's got to be easy for me. So you want to know how it is, the traffic pattern, to get in and out of your location. Is the building hard to find? That goes to what I said before. If it's set way back, it's hard to find. Once they've been there once, it's okay, right? But as you're building a new practice, it's got to be easy to find. And if it's not easy to find, in your marketing, you've got to put maps out. You've got to make it easy for them to find it, because if it's too hard, they won't come, or they won't continue to come. Think about the office buildings in the area that may bring in business commuters, something that you can market with to help build your new practice. Where will your business sign be located? Doing an office right now, and they made a big deal out of signage, and this is where you've got to have your signage, and it's got to meet the local codes. You can't see it from one street. The one thing I do when I find a location, I go out and I walk all the streets. I want to know foot traffic. I want to know signage. I want to know if I put a sign up there, how easy is it going to be? And if it's not, you need to take a look at it. You want to make sure that when you negotiate your lease, you know what your signage is and what signage you can put up. Can it be lit? Can it not be lit? How big are the letters? You know, those kind of things. So there's some real constraints when you get into your lease as far as that you need to be aware of. Will your business sign be easily visible? It's like I said, I walk it. If it's not easily visible, I at least bring it to your attention, let you know what the issues are. Sometimes you can negotiate that with the building owner. Sometimes there's no negotiate, and all you can do is they got a monument sign out front, and your sign is about 1 foot by 3 foot amongst with 24 others. That doesn't do you a lot of good. That's sometimes what you're stuck with in a commercial building. There's no real signage that you can put on that. So you want to be careful about that when you're looking. And you want to consider both vehicle and foot traffic. If you're going to be in a strip mall, you want to make sure the signage is people walk up and down there. If it's walking by a commercial building and there's no signage, it's got to be tough. So they're just some of the things you'll always want to look at. Again, when I'm out surveying locations for the dentist, I walk. I walk from both directions. I drive from both directions. I drive all around the building because I want to know what that building has to offer and how easy it is going to be to put signage up for you. Your new practice, visibility is very, very important to you. If you're a specialty practice, if you're an oral surgeon, if you're ortho, if you're pedo, it's not as important because most of those practices are referral type practices. Right? Your general dentist or your pediatrician is going to refer you. You're going to have a card. You're going to know where it's at. They don't rely quite as much on visibility as a general dentist trying to get their practice going. So you be careful with that. And it's a delicate balance between visibility and convenience. Even though the building is very visible, you see a lot of signage. If you got to park a half a mile away and you've got to negotiate your way through a lot of buildings to get there, and it's hard to get to, they may come to you once, but they're going to find somebody else, especially if they're elderly. If the elderly patients if it doesn't have easy accessibility, they're going to find something else. So that's something we look at. So once we found the space, the office space is just as important as the physical location. So you got the physical location, now you've got the space that you're gonna move into, right? Is the space sufficient for your practice needs? Is it large enough? Is it too large? Does it have good accessibility in and out? If you're going to do surgery, you're going to be able to have an exit going out into the parking lot for the patients that come out of surgery. Because one thing you don't want to do is have them walk through you don't want them to walk through your waiting room full of gauze and blood and all of that. You want to find an exit. Just some of the things. You got to evaluate what your long and your short-term growth plans are. We may start, and you may design your practice to be a 4-operatory practice. You think that's big enough? Is that in your 5 and 10-year plan? If it's in your 10-year plan that you're going to bring in an associate and you're going to work extended hours, you better buy a space now or rent a space now that's large enough because it's expensive to move your practice. So if your long-term plans are that, and you're going to need more treatment rooms, make sure it's big enough. Make sure the space is large enough for you to grow. Or if they have space next to it, you got to be careful about that. They'll promise you to be able to move in. Next thing you know, they move something in. You need to find out how that's going to work. Doesn't mean you have to build it out, but it means if you want to go larger, you need to make sure you have a space, especially when you're going to sign a 10-year lease, right? 10-year lease with a 5 and a 5. You want to make sure that your building is large enough for you. Again, does it have room to grow? You don't want to squeeze in a small space. I know that square footage is expensive. I know it adds to your rent, but you don't want to get into something too small and in 5 years say, geez, it's just not big enough. I got to move. I got to go out and do this all over again. Does anybody have any idea what it costs to build out a dental space today? I've got a vanilla shell, which means it's sheetrock. I got a ceiling, and I may have air conditioning on it. That's all I've got. It may have a bathroom plumbed into it. Any idea what it costs to build that space out without one piece of dental equipment to move in?
Like 125 square foot.
Yep. You've done this before. I know you. No, I know. It's anyway, we tell the doctor, if we're having a meeting with the doctor, we tell them the budget is anywhere from $90 to $120 a square foot. And that $120 a square foot can go crazy. It depends on your fit and finish. But that's real typical. So you can see that it gets really expensive. You put a 2,000 square foot space in, and you pay, make it easy because I make it easy for me, it's $100 a square foot. You just put $200,000 into your building. You don't want to do that every 5 years. It's a little tough on the pocketbook, so you want to be careful. That's why I said don't squeeze into something too small that you can't grow into, right? The impact of neighboring businesses. How will they impact your dental practice? Are you going to put your practice in a strip mall next to a massage parlor on one side and a bar on the other side? Right? What kind of people are going to be hanging around? Is your anchor tenant a 7-Eleven? You know, those kind of things. Not that 7-Eleven's a bad business, but you get a lot of people hanging around it. So you want to know what kind of commercial businesses around it, how they may impact your practice. Back when we just started putting, Bob, in Denver, we were just starting to put dental offices in strip malls, right? I mean, it was always in a medical building. It was always in a professional building. Now we started to say, gee, strip malls may be a good place to put a dental practice. I always put them next, if they were coming into Denver, this is when I worked in Denver, I'd always put them next to a cleaner in a liquor store. And they were always successful because new people coming into town, they are always looking for a liquor store and they were always looking for a cleaners. And it seemed to work. It's not quite that way anymore, but that's why it was when we were in Denver, right, Bob? What type of clientele do they attract? You want to know what kind of businesses they affect and how it's going to affect your practice. Do they provide the opportunity to gain new patients? In some areas, I've had doctors go out and be very successful marketing just to the commercial buildings around them, professional buildings, and be able to gain patients, let them know that they're there, because a lot of professional people don't like to travel. It's convenient for them to have their dentistry done. So you want to be careful of that, or make yourself aware of that. So even the best practitioners fail because of poor choices. So the best advice I can give any of you when you're out looking for locations, working with myself, working with a broker, working with a good commercial person, is please do your homework. Take time to learn the demographics. The result, if you do your homework, the result that you do to find your location will offer huge benefits if you do it correctly and you move into the right location. It'll be very, very successful. The choices you make about the location will determine everything. Your family legacy, your practice value, eventual estate, what your estate is worth, and a lot more. So it's really important. Do me a favor, don't leave it to choice. Go to an expert. When it comes to leases, I don't know who's doing your leasing deal. Who's doing your leasing deal?
Louis Gilman.
Yeah. There's some really, really good ones. I was to one last night, and it's amazing what is in leases if you're not aware of how bad your lease can be. So put yourselves in the hands of an expert. Make sure that they understand dental. Make sure they understand leasing, because it's really important. So don't leave it to chance. That's all I've got, unless somebody's got some questions. Okay.